This episode of One Hit Thunder is brought to you by DistroKid.
Movie night with the girls is a blast no matter what, but sometimes we like to level up our experience and make it more memorable.
Streaming at home is routine, but going to the movies with my friends is an event.
Watching a film on the big screen with surround sound is so immersive and exciting.
And you can't beat those cushy reclining chairs.
And now that I joined the Regal Crown Club, I earn points every time I buy a ticket or concessions.
As soon as she told me Regal has a free loyalty rewards program, I joined too.
I can use my points for concession upgrades, movie tickets, and merch.
I like using my points to enter sweepstakes for exclusive prizes.
On Mondays, I get 25% off candy.
And Tuesdays are Regal Value Days, half off popcorn and tickets as low as $5.
Plus, Regal adds a free popcorn to my account every year for my birthday.
After my 6th visit, I got bonus points.
You've only gone 6 times. I've gone 10 times, and I got even more bonus points.
Wait, you went to the movies without me?
Yeah.
One hit is all you need to make the money guaranteed, and you can live off royalties forever.
And it makes me wonder, is it just a wonder, or is it one hit thunder?
The THUNDRED.
All right, Matt. Well, we're back with part 2. This will be numbers 80 through 61 on the THUNDRED, our top 100 albums of all time. For anyone who didn't listen last week, I surveyed over 100 people of all different backgrounds and musical tastes and ages and genders, everybody, and I got their top 20 lists. And mathematically, whatever someone would put at number 1, they would get 20 points. Whatever they would put at number 20 would get 1 point. And work its way down. Basically, I just got all the math, put it all together, and that's how we got this list. Matt, something I forgot to mention, or I don't remember if I mentioned in the last episode where we did 100 through 81, was that no greatest hits or compilations were allowed on people's lists.
You did mention that, and I'm going to say something you didn't mention on that first episode, but you've told me. And I don't know if this is even the episode where it comes into play, but when you say that you did the math, you did not editorialize whatsoever, because you've told me that there is at least one instance where 2 albums by the same artist are literally back-to-back in the lineup because they literally were a point difference off from each other when you did the math.
I don't know if that ended up being in the final list, but at one point when I was tallying stuff up, maybe before it was finalized, but yes, there were back-to-back albums by the same artist. I think on some of these lists like Rolling Stone and Apple Music, they would to a certain extent probably not let that happen. I remember the Apple Music list maybe had 2 Radiohead albums on it.
There was 1 or 2 Beatles albums on the entire list. Where like Rolling Stone, sometimes it will be like the top 10 have like 3 Beatles albums amongst it. But yeah, that's just interesting factoid. Maybe that didn't come out in the final mix of everything, but that like we did not even factor in, like, is it going to be weird that 2 albums from the same artist are back to back? Like, nope, this is what the math told us the numbers are. So that's like what it is. And I am so excited. So let's dive in.
Yeah, man. Were you pleasantly surprised by 100 through 81?
I was wildly surprised. And I have pulled up my list that I sent you so that I can see if any of mine show up in this grouping.
All right, so you ready to go then?
I am ready. Let's do this.
At number 80, Fiona Apple, Tidal.
What I need is a good defense, 'cause I'm feeling like a criminal, and I need to be redeemed to the one I've sinned against, because he's all I ever knew of love.
You sent this to me in your list of, you sent me a pretty lengthy list, which I appreciate you being cautious of, like, hey, maybe Matt didn't listen to this. I am a mid-90s alternative man. Of course I have heard this album by Fiona Apple. This album rules. Fiona Apple covers so many different genres just in these 10 tracks. You know what I mean? Like, Shadow Boxer sounds so different than, like, Sleep to Dream. she really runs the gamut across 10 tracks, and there is not a bad track to be found on this album. One of the most impressive debuts of the 90s, for sure.
Yeah, this album is pretty incredible, especially for a debut album. What a voice, what a songwriter.
And I believe she was like 18 or 19 when this record came out. She was young as hell, but had this awesome, soulful voice.
Yeah. Criminal is on this album and Shadowboxer. Those were the two big hits from this one. But the song that I absolutely love from this album, Matt, super emotional song, is called Never Is a Promise.
Yep.
Do you know that song?
Oh my God, yeah. Though, like I said, this whole record is great. If you only know Fiona Apple for a handful of singles, you owe it to yourself to dive into the whole discography, because she really is just all home runs. I don't think that there's a bad Fiona Apple release.
At number 79, The Cure, Disintegration.
This is a great album too. Is this the only, well, I guess you can't tell me, but I'm assuming this is the only Cure record that makes it on the list, which I don't know if I agree with that, if that ends up being the case, but this is like the album that's loaded with hits. This is practically a greatest hits record for the Cure.
You think so? You think that? I thought kind of the opposite. At this point, this was their biggest selling album. Of course, their album Wish from 1992 went on to be even bigger than this album because it had Friday I'm in Love on it. This album did sell 4 million copies, but the song that I feel lasted the longest from this was Love Song.
Yeah.
I love this album, but when it comes to Lullaby and Fascination Street and Pictures of You, I think of those songs as being songs that lovers of The Cure really like, but I don't hear those songs in everyday life or something. I don't think of those as like, oh, these timeless hits. To me, they are. The Cure for me is another band that I kind of feel like all their best songs are spread out over a bunch of albums. And this might be I don't know if this is even my number one. I actually think that The Head on the Door is my favorite Cure album.
I'm with you on that, actually. That is my favorite Cure album, The Head on the Door.
Yeah.
I think the reason why I say that is because the first thing I ever bought by The Cure was their greatest hits album. And so many tracks are from this album on it. Like all 4 of the songs that you named made it onto that greatest hits record. So when you're getting like 1 or 2 songs off of Wish, like 1 or 2 songs off of The Head on the Door, and then you have 4 of the songs on the greatest hits record being from the same record, in my mind, I thought, oh, this is the one that like really did it for them. But yeah, I mean, I would say I agree with you. The Head on the Door, just between In Between Days and Close to Me, like those are just 2 like undeniable bangers. But I'm just glad that The Cure made it. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have any doubt, but like The Cure has to have some representation. That also has 6 Different Ways, which I don't think was a single, but is one of my favorite Cure songs.
Yeah, mine too. And that's from The Head on the Door, which is not the album we're talking about. We're talking about Disintegration. And I do love this album. I kind of think this is the most goth Cure album.
Yes.
It is like the darkest of their albums. And I was reading up on it, and I think at that point, Robert Smith had turned 30 and just was in a different state of mind. And there's a whole vibe to this album. I love the vibe of this album. I think you could put this on, listen to it front to back, and it doesn't have any of those like super sunshiny type Cure songs, but yeah. I think it's really, really good.
Even the album cover feels like the most goth of all of their album covers. It's very dark and gray.
Yeah. At number 78, Missy Elliott, Under Construction.
Is it worth it? Let me work it. I put my thing down, flip it and reverse it. It's your primitive is why yet. It's your primitive is why yet. If you got a big, let me search it to find out how hard I gotta work. Yeah, it's your primitive is why yet. It's your primitive is why yet. If you a fly.
So this one caught me off guard when you sent me a list of albums to listen to. I have always enjoyed Missy Elliott. I've never sat down and listened to one of her albums in its entirety. But anytime that one of these lists has ever been created, usually it's her debut album that's on the list for Missy Elliott, the Super Duper Fly release with The Rain on it. But for me, like, all of my favorite Missy Elliott singles are off of Under Construction. This album was so much fun to listen to. The opening track is great. The second track is a cover of Bring the Pain featuring Method Man. Like, this is a really, really cool record. Like, this is a record I'm going to listen to again in the future, but I never really sat, like, I knew Gossip Folks and Work It and stuff like that, but this was a blast. I'm so glad this ended up on the list because I've discovered a new rap record that I love basically from front to back.
I'm really surprised. I would have thought this would have been one you're like, oh yeah, I know this album front to back. I really only know Missy Elliott singles, and it's only from reading other lists and reading the critical acclaim that I'm like, maybe I should dig into Missy Elliott a little bit more. Work It. That is the song I think of when it comes to Missy Elliott. That's a song that comes to mind. I don't know if that's the same way for everybody, but that to me is Missy Elliott.
For sure. And this just captures what made Missy Elliott so cool in general, was like one of the earliest artists to be working with Timbaland, and like Timbaland just creating these funky ass beats in the beginning. And I think it continues into Under Construction. The music in this, if this was just an instrumental record, I would still be praising it as much as I am, because the beats are so unique and like get hooked in. They're almost hooks in themselves as just the beat behind the song.
Yeah. And to have what I consider to be her biggest song, whether that the charts agree with me or not, to have the chorus of it basically being a backwards
sample,
a backwards vocal, to make that your biggest song, that's just impressive. And yeah, she's always stood out as being very unique. Nobody sounds like her. And I'm glad that this list made me dive into this album a little bit more. I agree. This is great.
All right. Next one.
Number 77, Paramore, Riot.
Whatever makes it break, but I got it where I want it now. Whoa, it was never my intention to brag, to steal it all away from you now. But God, does it feel so good? 'Cause I got it where I want it now. And if you could, then you know you would. 'Cause God, it just feels so. It just feels so.
Here's where I make my weird confession. Like, I like Paramore, but you love Paramore. I don't even know if Riot would be my favorite Paramore record. I really do like that debut album that has almost no hit songs on it, the one where they're all on the couch on the cover. But you love all the newer Paramore stuff. So I want to know, how do you feel about Riot being, if this is the only Paramore album that makes the list, are you okay with this being the one?
Riot would have been far from my favorite Paramore album. My favorite Paramore album is the self-titled that has Ain't It Fun and Still Into You on it. Like, that album is flawless front to back. I love their next album, After Laughter. I feel like this band has gotten better and better, but this album is like the pop punk album.
And this is the hits album.
Yeah, this is the album with Misery Business on it, which Misery Business is fine. It's a good song, but it's not, to me, as special as a song like Ain't It Fun. This album also has Crush, Crush, Crush on it. It has That's What You Get, which for an earlier Paramore song, I think is probably the best.
Yeah.
And I get why people like it. This is a very Warped Tour album. I think probably a lot of people have memories of like high school and going to Warped Tour and things like that and listening to this album. I just don't have as strong of a connection to this album. That doesn't take anything away from it. I mean, Misery Business is probably the Paramore song that people recognize the most, and bands cover, and people go crazy when it comes on at a party or a dance club or whatever. So I can see why people put this on their list. It just wouldn't be my personal choice.
No, and that's kind of where I land it too. But again, as you're naming those songs, you're like, it's got Misery Business and Crush, 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 and that's what you get. And I'm suddenly having flashbacks to playing Rock Band 2 with my friends, and I'm like, God damn, this does have a ton of great songs. But I agree with you. This is a band that got better over time. They became more refined, but I'm almost positive this is the biggest selling record for them, just on the grand scale of all the hits. I'm going to check that very quickly, actually, and see. Riot peaked at No, Brand New Eyes and Paramore, self-titled. Man, this was actually, besides the self-titled, or besides their debut album, the lowest charting of their albums, peaking at 15, but Brand New Eyes and This Is Why peaked at number 2. After Laughter peaked at 6, and Paramore self-titled peaked at number 1 on the Billboard charts.
Well, I'm glad the Billboard charts agree with my taste.
Yeah.
At number 76, Peter Gabriel, So.
In your eyes, the light, the heat, I am complete. See the doorway, 1,000 churches, the resolution of all the fruitless searches. Oh, I see the light and the heat.
This one's got some heavy hitter Peter Gabriel hits all over it.
Yeah. This album, from the time I was a kid, the music videos were so memorable. Some of the best music videos ever. Sledgehammer and Big Time, absolutely incredible. Sledgehammer is one of the first songs that I remember loving. And I don't know if it was because of the music video, but now when I listen to this song, it's just incredible. Not to mention, this album has Red Rain, and probably most importantly, Matt, this is the album with In Your Eyes, which wasn't really even that big of a hit at the time. I think it was one of those songs that just stood the test of time. And then it was, of course, it was featured in Say Anything, and I think that gave it a little boost. But I am actually surprised this is as low as it is, to be honest. This album is unreal.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the Say Anything of it all, though, because, like, Say Anything came out in between this record and Peter Gabriel's next record, right? So it's not like this was Stranger Things digging up Kate Bush's, like, hit from, almost 30 years ago. This was like the song was a minor hit just 3 years ago, and Say Anything was able to, like, revive it. And then it just became this covered song. I don't know if this song ever made it outside of Philadelphia, but my memory of the song In Your Eyes was Y100, the local radio station, would do these things called Sonic Sessions, and it would be like, for a half hour, Ben Folds 5 would come into the studio and play live, but it was like a stripped down, like almost acoustic set. And they would take all those recordings and they would put out these compilation albums of, like, the Sonic Sessions Volume 1, and it was be one song from each one of those artists. Every once in a while, if they couldn't get a big name act, they would book a local guy. And they booked this local musician named Jeffrey Gaines, and he covered In Your Eyes during his Sonic session. And it was like the most played song on their radio station for the summer when I was a kid. And it was just like hearing this small, think of like an MTV Unplugged crowd, hearing this small, intimate crowd just screaming along the lyrics to In Your Eyes to this guy's acoustic rendition was my first connection with the song before I ever saw the movie Say Anything, before I ever knew who Peter Gabriel was. So I was just inclined to love that song as like a mammoth sing-along song. But Chris, if we were to do this again next year, if we were to do another THUNDRED list and it was to be greatest music videos of all time, we might be talking about Sledgehammer in the number one spot. That video, all these years later, incredible. And I agree with you. For a long time, I really could only think of the song as a music video.
Peter Gabriel was always ahead of his time, and he was in the area of not only music, but also music videos, and really taking it to the next level. And also, this album was my first exposure to Kate Bush on a song called Don't Give Up, which I really don't like that song. And it took me like 2 decades I had to have friends be like, you would really like Kate Bush. And I'm like, really? And then I was like, oh, I've been missing out all this time because I didn't like Don't Give Up. So, yeah, I'm glad this is on here. I could see it being even higher. It was nominated for Album of the Year in 1987, but lost to Paul Simon's Graceland. I actually like this album more than Graceland. So
I agree with that. But yes, what I wanted to say lastly was like, man, Sledgehammer Outside the Video is a great song. Just a funky, awesome, catchy song.
Oh, yeah. At number 75, Van Halen, 1984.
Ooh, okay. It makes me wonder if the self-titled also makes it later on the list or not. But 1984, I mean, we talked about this when we did the 1984 draft. This plus the self-titled basically gives you most of the Van Halen greatest hits. You get Hot for Teacher on this one. You get Panama on this one. You get Jump on this one. I mean, you're getting some of the biggest songs in this band's entire career. It's the last album that they did with David Lee Roth until like 2010, I want to say, is when Different Kind of Truth came out.
2012.
2012, so I was close. This is probably my favorite Van Halen album. Even if you take the hits off of it, it still has some awesome deep cuts. So I'm excited that this is on here. What's funny is that I don't know everybody that you polled, but I'm sitting here thinking like, all right, Jim Legrando and Matt DiStefano, your lists were certainly put to work today helping to get Van Halen 1984 up here.
You know, this album reached number 2 on the Billboard 200, and it stayed there for 5 weeks, but it was kept out of the top spot all 5 weeks by Michael Jackson's Thriller, which, funny enough, Eddie Van Halen plays on that album. He makes a guest appearance on that album. So Eddie Van Halen was involved in both 1 and 2 at that time. I'm not like a huge Van Halen guy, but I can respect it. I think Jump was Van Halen's biggest song ever, which is really funny because it's like a synth-based song for a band that's known for their guitars.
Yeah.
And so that's cool. But Hot for Teacher is a wild song, too.
I was going to say, I think Hot for Teacher's the song that had the most longevity out of all the singles. Like, you still hear Jump in Panama every once in a while, but, like, Hot for Teacher's such a tour de force for every instrument in that band that it's definitely, in 2024, the song that people think of the most when they think of 1984.
I'll give you that. At number 74, the self-titled album from Boston.
I was very happy to see this on there. This is one of my favorite records from the 70s. If you don't listen to classic rock radio a lot, I think the impressiveness of this album can be very lost. But, like, this album, from everything I've ever heard, from every music nerd I've known in my life, be it, like, uncles to actual musicians, is such an impressive achievement because you have this album that literally is 8 tracks long. The first 5 songs on the album were like radio staples of the 70s. This was a debut album from a band that no one knew prior, and I'm pretty sure this entire album was recorded in the guitarist's basement. Like, it's not even like it was a home studio recording.
You're right.
That he did. Like, the impressiveness on how good this album sounds for like a 1976 recording is insane to comprehend.
I'm looking right now, and you are right. This was recorded in a home studio. And what's funny about this album is I don't know if there's ever been an album that's just more straight up rock and roll.
Yeah.
And you know what else is funny about this? I'm not like a big 70s classic rock guy, but of course I know More Than a Feeling. But a lot of these song titles, I'm like, what is foreplay / long time? And I'm like, what is peace of mind? And what is smoking? And then when I put them on, every time I'm like, oh, this song, of course I like, whether you know it or not, you know these songs.
Well, and I feel like we used this phrase a long time ago, but like Boston, as far as I know, and this is one of those ones where we'll have to call in our like classic rock experts to confirm, but I'm pretty sure this is one of the earliest examples of a phrase we like to use of guitarmony, where it's like two guitars harmonizing with each other. That is so much of this record, and it sounds amazing. It sounds amazing in 2024. So the idea of what this sounded like in 1976 is like hard to comprehend for me.
It does sound good. It does stand the test of time. It's one of the best-selling debut albums of all time, sold 20 million copies worldwide. And that's pretty impressive for something recorded in a guy's home studio. It still sounds great today. So Boston's Boston making the list makes sense. Maybe some people out there think it should have been higher, but it's at number 74 on our list.
All right.
Number 73, No Doubt, Tragic Kingdom.
Chris, let me ask you this. Is this your favorite No Doubt record?
You know, I'm pretty lukewarm on No Doubt, but yes, definitely. Is it yours?
Usually. It's usually between this and their very early goofy ska era. Like their self-titled album is a lot of fun. But this was when I think of like albums where it felt like they could not miss with the singles, I think of this and I think of Bush 16 Stone. Like those are like two albums where I felt like every couple months there was a new single on the radio or on MTV, and that it was just as good and popular as all of the ones before it. Like arguably the weakest of all the singles from this album chart-wise was Excuse Me, Mister, and I think that song rips. Like I think that song is incredible.
That's a great song. And I got to tell you, when Just a Girl came out, I was like,
Same. I did not like it at first.
I didn't like the song. I still don't like it that much. I mean, the message is cool. I just didn't really like it musically and melodically. I didn't like it. And the video was all like washed out. There was something about it I didn't like. But geez, when Spiderwebs came out, I was like, oh boy. And then Don't Speak. I love Sunday Morning. Yes, Excuse Me, Mister. These are all great songs. And Matt, I ask you, without this album, would we have gotten the ska punk boom of the late 90s?
I think that this helped a lot.
Yeah.
Like a lot. And I just got to give a quick shout out. Like there's at least one song on this that was never released as a single. It's probably my favorite No Doubt song is the song 16. That's right before Sunday Morning and Don't Speak. Awesome guitar riff. Lots of fun. This album is also the last time that Eric Stefani helped with any of the songwriting. Do you know why Eric Stefani left No Doubt?
Because he went to animate The Simpsons, right?
He did. And if you watch the Lollapalooza episode of The Simpsons, as a little homage, when Homer's like in the crowd, he drew all of No Doubt behind Homer Simpson while he's watching the Smashing Pumpkins play.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. At number 72, Frank Ocean, Channel Orange.
Do you or do you not think so far ahead? 'Cause I've been thinking about forever. Ooh. Or do you not think so far ahead? 'Cause I've been thinking about forever.
This was the other album I had to dive into.
Ooh.
This had been on my to-do list for a really long time. Like, I know so many people speak highly of this album. You spoke very highly of it when we did the Apple Music one. And I didn't know what I was going into because I feel like when I heard Frank Ocean brought up in conversation, it was always through the lens of hip-hop. And there is an element of hip hop, but this reminded me, I don't know who came first. I'm going to assume Frank Ocean came first with this, but like it reminds me of what later Childish Gambino sounded like, where it's very soulful R&B with these moments of rap in it. This was a mood. Like I listened to this and Missy Elliott. And when I had the Missy Elliott track on, it was like a little party in my living room for 45 minutes. But this, I was like, oh, I just want to like lay down on the couch and take this album in. Like it was such a nice, chilled out vibe the whole time. Another one that I'm definitely going to add into my regular rotation. I love this.
I'm very happy that this list made you dive into this. Matt, I'll tell you right now, this was number 3 on my personal list.
Ooh, none of my personal lists so far on this, but we'll see.
It's a perfect album as far as I'm concerned. Thinking About You is one of the best love songs I've ever heard. I really love this song Pyramids, which is like this journey where halfway through the song, it turns into a completely different song. Super Rich Kids is such a fun song, but I don't even have to go through song by song. This is a full album experience. There are so many different types of songs on here. Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite albums. I never get sick of it. This is one thing I could say is in common for a lot of albums that end up being my favorite of all time. The first time I listened to it, maybe the first 2 times I listened to it, I was like, this is okay. And then the more I let it wash over me and the deeper I got into like particular songs, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the greatest album of all time. And I'm not spoiling anything about our list or other lists or whatever, but the Apple Music list, I noticed that they had Frank Ocean Blonde album, which I like that album too, but I think this is the superior album. Blonde came after this one, and he takes a long time between albums. There's been a long time since there's been a Frank Ocean album, but hey, you got plenty of time if you haven't already to get into Channel Orange.
All right.
Number 71, David Bowie, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars.
There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He's told us not to blow it, 'cause he knows it's all worthwhile. He told me, let the children lose it, let the children use it, let all the children boogie.
I have a decent amount of David Bowie records. He's one of those artists that I always feel like I should like more than I do. So I'm constantly trying to like dabble in a bunch of his hits. And this was probably of his like beloved records, one of the ones I liked the most when I dove into it. But this is one that's always on those lists. This is going to be on your Rolling Stones albums of all time list. And like with good reason. There are some bangers that you find on this album, and kind of rare that we get to say this, but this one, it's not top heavy. It's the back half is insane. The final 3 tracks, you get Ziggy Stardust, Suffragette City, and Rock and Roll Suicide as like the 3 that close out this record. I mean, keep in mind, at the front of this record, you still get Moonage Daydream and Starman. So it's like, This one's just stacked with hits. Bowie's always trying to do these concept albums. This one feels the most cohesive of a concept, at least. I really do like this album. I think that this is definitely Bowie's strongest album, especially from like the mainstream side. I'm sure that there's diehard Bowie fans that'll tell you some like obscure album that he put out in like the middle of the 80s is like the best one he's ever done, but it had no hits because it was ahead of its time. But as far as like the albums with songs, this is the one you should have.
Ahead of its time is probably the right way to put a lot of what David Bowie did. It's just me trying to get into it in reverse. I can respect it and appreciate it. I just don't have the desire to listen to it that much, with the exception from this album, probably of Starman. I really like Starman. It's hard not to like that song. I like all the things he was doing and pushing boundaries here. Just the songs don't necessarily resonate with me personally, but it certainly did with a lot of people because it was number 71 on our list. Hey everybody, don't go anywhere. We got numbers 70 through 61 of the THUNDRED coming right up after a few words from our sponsors. Hey there, One Hit Thunder listeners. Are you ready to take your music to the next level? Well, get ready to rock because this episode is brought to you by DistroKid, the ultimate digital music distribution service for artists like you. With DistroKid, you can easily upload your songs or albums to online stores and streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube Music, reaching fans all around the globe. But that's just the beginning. DistroKid offers a ton of awesome features like Hyperfollow, which helps you promote your releases and get pre-saves on your songs, all for free. But wait, there's more. The DistroKid app is now available on iOS and Android. With the app, you can manage your releases, track your streaming stats, and even withdraw your earnings, all from the palm of your hand. And for those looking to perfect their sound, check out Mixia. This powerful tool allows you to put the finishing touches on your tracks in minutes, ensuring they sound polished and professional every time. But that's not all. DistroKid has just launched a brand new feature called Instant Share, allowing you to easily share large files securely with collaborators, producers, and more. With Instant Share, you can keep your music streaming at the highest quality while making the best impression possible. So what are you waiting for? Elevate your music career today with DistroKid and unlock a world of possibilities. Possibilities that I know all about because I've been using DistroKid for years. It's seriously great. If you haven't used it before, you're going to love it. And One Hit Thunder listeners get an exclusive offer, 30% off your first year with DistroKid by signing up at distrokid.com/VIP/OneHitThunder. That's distrokid.com/VIP/OneHitThunder.
With Amex Platinum, you can really be in the now. Access to Resi Priority Notify. Yes. 4 p.m. checkout with fine hotels and resorts booked through Amex Travel.
We needed this.
And dedicated card member entrances at select events.
Let's go!
Means you can focus on the present moment. That's the powerful backing of American Express. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/withAmex. Card member entrance access not limited to Amex Platinum Card.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
With Uber Reserve, good things come to those who plan ahead. Family vacay? Reserve your ride as soon as you book your flights. To all the planners, now you can reserve your Uber ride up to 90 days in advance. See Uber app for details.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means. It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Black Friday week starting November 21st.
And now, back to the THUNDRED. Number 70, Michael Jackson, Thriller.
Wow, that is a low placement. All right, Chris, I'm going to ask this question. I've asked this question a million times, and I've said, don't tell me. But this is the one time I want to know. Is this the only Michael Jackson appearance on the list?
I'm not telling you that.
I just need to know. I need to know if this is what people landed on as the end-all, be-all best Michael Jackson release. And I mean, it's damn good. This is hit after hit after hit after hit. For a long time, I said this was my favorite Michael Jackson record. Over time, I've started to become more of a fan of Bad. I think Bad is just like this kind of forgotten how many good songs are on Bad release. But yeah, I mean, this is, you've got the title track, you've got Billie Jean, you've got Beat It. Even on like kind of the cheesier side of things, you got The Girl Is Mine with Paul McCartney. I'm pretty sure PYT is on this, right?
Oh, PYT is my favorite Michael Jackson song.
Yeah, like this is a great release.
Pretty much every song is a hit. Baby Be Mine and The Lady in My Life aren't really hits. The rest of it, Wanna Be Startin' Something. You know, it's funny. I think of Wanna Be Startin' Something, which is the opening track of the album. I think of that as being like off the wall era, Michael.
I did too. When you said that, I was like, no, you're incorrect. That's not on this one, Chris.
It is.
That
it
feels
is.
like that song specifically feels very off the wall era in a way that the rest of the album doesn't. But still, it's so good.
Well, Matt, this is the best-selling non-compilation album of all time.
Yep.
34 times platinum, sold 70 million copies worldwide, won 8 Grammys in 1984, including Album of the Year. I'm very surprised this is all the way down at number 70.
That's why I was like, I'm curious if there's any of his albums that scored higher than this because it feels so low. But I guess we'll find out. Wasn't this like number 1 or number 2 on the Apple Music list?
No, I don't think it was that high. I'd have to look, but I don't think it was
super. I think it was in the top.
It was probably
5.
top 10. I think it was top 10, but yeah, pretty low. Maybe everyone making their lists were just like, someone else will put Thriller.
Yeah. And Chris, I just checked. It was number 2 on that Apple Music list, right behind Lauryn Hill.
At number 69, That Dog, Retreat from the Sun.
The biggest thing I connect this album with, and I love this album, but when I think of this album now, Chris, I think of Your House.
Yeah,
because
that's nice.
It's always the album that's facing forward on your record display. So every time I come into Your House, I see that dog looking at me, and with good reason. So I missed That Dog when it happened, right? Like when they were a band and an active band and putting out records, it just like never crossed my wavelengths. But when I graduated high school and I was in college, I stayed in touch with my high school film teacher. And he was like a big music nerd. And he burnt me a copy of this album because he was like, he's like, with how much you love 90s music, the fact that you don't know this band, like you need to listen to this. And boy, was he right. This record rarely left my CD player after that.
Matt, I'll tell you this was number 11 on my list. At number 11, what do you get? That got 9? No, it got 10 points from me. I think that's the way it works. So it's so funny. This is one above Thriller. But that's the magic of the THUNDRED is you never know. This album, I think it could have been heavily weighted by the people I reached out to that I'm close friends with, because this was a very important and beloved album among people that I know. And it's one of the most perfect power pop albums ever made. If you haven't heard this, you could start with Never Say Never, but it's another album where front to back, it's an incredible album. It's a perfect pop album. I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is one that I hope people listening to this podcast go and check out because of it.
Number 68, Carole King, Tapestry.
And it's too late, baby, now it's too late. Though we really did try to make it. Something inside has died, and I can't hide, and I just can't fake it. Oh, no.
I mean, we've talked about this particular album a couple times on the podcast now. This is another one of those albums where you may not... I feel like there's a world where people might not be familiar with the specific album versions of the songs on Tapestry. But if you somehow never heard the Carole King versions of these songs, you have heard some of the biggest stars in the world make these songs massive hits throughout their career. Like, this might be the greatest album produced by a singer-songwriter in music history, with just how deep every track is in being like a song that someone has reimagined years later and made a big hit over and over and over and over again. And of course, you and I have to mention, I mean, the frickin' Gilmore Girls theme song is a cover of one of the songs on this album.
No, isn't it the actual version?
No,
is it a cover?
It's still Carole King, but she re-recorded it with her daughter singing it with her to tie into the theming of Gilmore Girls.
Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that. Okay, this was number 14 on my list. 68 seems low for this one, too. It's just nothing but hits. I Feel the Earth Move. It's Too Late. So Far Away. I mean, It's Too Late and So Far Away. I probably think those are two of the greatest songs ever written. But also, You've Got a Friend. You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman is on this album. I would say it's probably the greatest singer-songwriter album ever. Yeah, it's 14 times platinum, one of the best-selling albums of all time. It's amazing.
Two others that you didn't name that were also pretty big hits at the time. Will You Love Me Tomorrow is a beautiful song. And like, I Feel the Earth Move is a fucking great opening song to this record. Like, yeah, I think that this was just missed my list. This would have been like in my low 20s, like above 30, somewhere in the 25, 30. And I think the reason I didn't include it on my list was as I was like trying to figure out what to put in there at the end, I thought, well, for sure, Tapestry doesn't need my help to make it on the 100. Like,
yeah, well, don't take our word for it either, because this album was ranked number 25 on Rolling Stone's list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. And it also won in 1972 at the Grammys. It won Album of the Year, Song of the Year, and Record of the Year. And in 1998, it was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. It's pretty widely regarded as one of the best albums of all time. And it's number 68 on our list.
yeah.
Number 67, Bjork, Post.
I go through all this before you wake up, so I can feel happier to be safe again with you. I go through all this before you wake up, so I can feel happier to be safe again with you.
Chris, as our resident Bjork fan, is this your favorite Bjork release?
This was number 16 on my list, making it not the highest Bjork album on my list. But when I saw this was on the list and I went back through it, and I'm starting to reconsider, because the thing about Post is it has my two favorite Bjork songs on it. Hyper Ballad and Possibly Maybe are 1 and 2 of my favorite Bjork songs. But as far as whole albums go, there's one that I have higher. But I'm so glad this is on the list. I mean, we were talking about David Bowie being ahead of his time. Bjork has always been ahead of her time. And not only is she unique and experimental, but especially back then, now she's kind of gotten even further away from this, but they're still great pop songs with amazing melodies, incredible lyrics. One thing I love about Bjork that I saw someone bring up before is that English is her second language, but she writes lyrics in English better than most people who that's their first language.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is another album that, like, you should experience this.
You did name your two favorite songs, but let's not shy away from also, like, Army of Me kicks off this record. You put it as one of your favorite 90s album openers on a bonus episode of Demakes.
That's right.
And one of my favorite Bjork songs, even though it's a cover, is her doing It's Oh So Quiet is so good. And it's so out there and weird. And you know what? Again, I said it earlier when we were talking about Peter Gabriel, but if we did a THUNDRED on just music videos, the amount of Bjork videos
all
that
of
would
them.
be scattered across that 100 would be insane, because beyond being ahead of her time as a musician, she was so ahead of her time with working with directors who could capture the surrealistic nature of her music. And I think Post, of the Bjork albums that I've heard, Post is probably my favorite, because it is just so all over. It dabbles a little bit into like trip hop. It definitely plays around with like techno and all different types of music. Like she's really kind of putting her fingers in all different types of genres, which is what makes something like out of nowhere you get It's Oh So Quiet, which is just like a full-blown 1930s swing throwback song, just so interesting in the placement. So yeah, I do love this record.
It's Oh So Quiet is kind of like the song that broke through to the MTV crowd at the time, and I like it, but it is nothing like the rest of this album.
No, that's what makes it so fun to me.
Yeah, and like Matt said, watch every Björk music video ever. She worked with all the greatest, from Spike Jonze to Gondry to, Chris Cunningham. She's worked with every great music video director to match the vibe of the music with the visual. She's my favorite artist. When someone asks me who my favorite artist is, I always say Björk. And Matt, one little tidbit I wanted to share with you, something I never knew. In the song Isabel, which you should watch the music video for that one, because that one is one that will break your brain. It is such a good music video. They sample Yellow, the band Yellow.
Oh.
Not Oh Yeah either, some other Yellow song.
Why would they?
At number 66, the self-titled album from The Cars.
I guess you're just what I needed. Just what I needed. I needed someone to feed. I guess you're just what I needed. Just what I needed. I needed someone to bleed.
Ooh, I mean, this is another. I mean, you were talking about That Dog being one of the most perfect power pop records of all time. The Cars self-titled is definitely in that conversation. I personally lean more towards Heartbeat City. I mean, You Might Think on there, you get Drive, you get Magic. Like those are all like pretty big songs. But this is another one where I've said before, top heavy. The first like 4 or 5 tracks on this self-titled record are like radio staples. You're getting My Best Friend's Girl. You're getting Just What I Needed. Like, you're getting some really big songs that have stood the test of time. It walked that interesting new wave line where, like, there are some new wave bands that kind of felt punky at the time. And this one is definitely one of the ones that I feel like, yeah, it wasn't like punk music, but it had that like punky attitude, that like don't give a fuck attitude. It's the song that everyone associates with a girl taking off her top thanks to Moving in Stereo and the way it was used in Fast Times at Ridgemount High as a girl came out of the pool for Judge Reinhold. Like, this is so full of the perfect sound of that late 70s turning into 80s musical landscape.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because that's the point I want to make about this. This sounds so 80s. It sounds so ahead of its time. This album came out in June 1978. So think about songs like Good Times Roll, My Best Friend's Girl, Just What I Needed. These sound like the sound of the 80s. These sound like what was to come. But The Cars, in conjunction with producer Roy Thomas Baker, Jesus Christ, what a producer, by the way. I mean, between Queen and The Cars, like, and go look at his discography. It's insane. But yeah, I think that is something a lot of our albums on this list have in common, is just being ahead of the curve.
This is the first time I've realized, by the way, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page. I did not realize that Ricky Ocasek doesn't sing Just What I Needed.
No, he doesn't. Ricky doesn't sing that one.
Ricky doesn't sing that one.
Ricky doesn't.
It's their basement Benjamin Orr. Like, that. I never realized that wasn't Rick singing that.
Yeah. Number 65, Stevie Wonder, Songs in the Key of Life.
What a tour de force record. It is so hard to, throughout the history of music, to put out a double album that people listen to and walk away saying, yeah, that definitely needed to be 2 albums. Like, most people walk away from a double album and they think, yeah, if you took like a couple songs from both of those, you would have made a really good single album. This might be the most beloved double album in music history for just how all over Stevie Wonder was, with amazing songs after amazing song after amazing song. You get like Isn't She Lovely? What a massive hit, right? Pastime Paradise, which wasn't a huge hit at the time, but boy, did it have a second life after Coolio got his hands.
Boy, did Coolio give that song another life.
But 2 of my favorite songs from him are on here with Sir Duke and I Wish. Like, both unbelievable songs. This record's so funky when it needs to be, but also so beautiful when it needs to be. And if this is the only time we see Stevie on this list, I'm glad that this is the one.
Matt, this was number 17 on my list. Back in 2016, 2017, somewhere in that era, I went and saw him play this album front to back at the arena in Pittsburgh. It was perfect. A perfect show. It's a perfect album. This was part of Stevie Wonder's run of winning Album of the Year 3 times. 3 albums in a row, winning Album of the Year before he decided to go make an album about plants. He was like, all right, I'm going to go make an instrumental album about plants. I'm winning Album of the Year too many times in a row. But yeah, this was number 4 on Rolling Stone's 2020 list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. A lot of people put this at number 1. And once again, this is a common theme among this 80 to 61 here. I'm surprised at it being this low on our list.
Listen, here's the thing. And I feel like you would have warned me and said we're not going to do this if this was the case. I know that our listeners lean into that like 90s and early 2000s punk music nostalgia. But man, I hope that these amazing like top 10 records for so many people don't suffer by the rose-tinted glasses of 2000s nostalgia.
Matt, don't underestimate the people that I reached out to with immaculate music tastes, and also our dear listeners who some of them also contributed lists. Don't underestimate us, because maybe these amazing albums are this low because there's even more amazing albums yet to come. Couldn't that be the case?
That could be the case. I'm going to ask you one question. You can choose to not answer until we get there. But was there any record that made it on this list where you personally thought, get the fuck out of here about it showing up on the list?
There might have been 1 or 2. And I don't think it's happened yet.
Okay.
I'll tell you this. When and if we get to 1, I will make it well known that I disagree with it, okay?
Okay. Perfect.
Number 64, 9 Inch Nails, The Downward Spiral.
I mean, Chris, you are Mr. 9 Inch Nails. You've rocked your shirts. Was this even on your list?
You'll be surprised to know that for how much of an effort I made to get this in our 1994 albums draft, this did not make my top 20. It was being considered, because I had more than 20 there, and it was definitely written down, and it would have been maybe 25 or 26, but no, it was not. It still made it to number 64 on our list, but it was not on my list, although I do love this album. Nothing sounds like this album. Trent Reznor, hey, once again, what's the theme of 80 to 61? Ahead of his time. Always has been from the start. And for those who don't know, this is the album with Closer on it. That's the big hit. March of the Pigs, Hurt is the closing track on this album. And it is a wild, dark journey. If you're not familiar with this album, It's not an album to put on at a party. Let's say that.
No. And you know what? This seems like as good a time as any to give a shout out to past guest Allie Gertz,
Yeah.
whose 9 Inch Nails cover album Peeled Back is now available everywhere. And I only mention that because on this she covered my favorite song on the album, Big Man with a Gun, which is definitely a song to not play at a party.
Heresy might be a great song to play at a party.
Heresy rules, Reptile rules, Piggy rules. Like there's not a skip track on this record as far as I'm concerned, which is weird because I don't think I can say that about any other 9 Inch Nails record.
Are you saying you don't skip over the song The Downward Spiral? Do you know which song that is?
I know which one that is. And you know what? It feels so cohesive to the rest of the album that I still stick it out. But yes, that's a very long, meandering song, but I still love it.
Yeah, and I will also say that the artwork for this album, the layout, is incredible. Maybe one of the best ever. And to match the vibe of this album, I don't know if you know this, Matt, but Trent Reznor recorded this album at the site of the murder of actress Sharon Tate by the members of the Manson family in 1969. Did you know that they turned that into a studio?
I think I remember reading that at some point. And yeah, I mean, this is one of those albums. The 90s were great for this. If you need any argument for the return of physical media, the one thing that digital releases can't replicate is like a well thought out, interactive album layout.
Like I said, Matt referenced it. I probably had 20 9 Inch Nails t-shirts in this era. They were my favorite band. And I remember like reading along to those lyrics in that lyric book on my bed. It was one of those ones where you had like the cardboard sleeve. I believe they call that an O card that went over the jewel case. It was just an amazing layout. And it's also an amazing album. And I could have seen this being higher on our list, but I did nothing to help get it any higher on our list. So there you go.
Perfect.
Number 63, Wu-Tang Clan. Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers.
Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with. Straight from the motherfucking slum that's busted. Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with.
Oh, I got to double check and see, was this on my list? Because it feels like it should have been. It was not.
Wow, you didn't help it.
No, this was definitely in my top 30 then, if it did make my top 20. I've said so many things about this album over the last year that we've been really focused on 1994 and talking about 90s music on Demakes, but I guess the short version that I'll say is this album feels so different than anything else in the history of rap because it is so raw. And it's like you are listening to arguably some of the greatest MCs of the 90s, but they're still rookies and they're hungry and they're trying anything that works. And you've got the RZA and Jizza's production is so interesting and unique and they're sometimes not rapping on the beat, but that makes it feel more dangerous and cool and unpredictable. And then you just get songs like Protect Your Neck and Bring the Ruckus and Wu-Tang Clan Ain't Nothing to Fuck With. And one of my favorites is obviously Shame on Her. And that's as far as I'll say about that song. But just every piece of this record feels like a group of friends just doing whatever comes to the top of their head in that moment. And their instinct was correct every single step of the way.
You know, I said this about the NWA album, and I'm going to repeat myself again. This is probably the other rap album that feels like punk rock.
Yeah.
And to go further on that, I remember at this time, there was this sort of split from the people that liked rap and stuff you'd see on TV and people that liked punk and skateboarding and stuff. This was the one album, the one rap album that crossed over and people would put on when you were skateboarding or you'd see it in skateboard videos. And it kind of brought two cultures together in a way, or at least in my experience it did. Maybe that was just where I grew up or something. But
no, I think that was the case across the board. I think that this album is crucial in rap having a place in skateboarding.
Yeah.
Like now it's not absurd to watch a skateboarding video and it be a rap song in the background, but I think this was the album that made that acceptable to start doing.
There's a lot of our albums that are lower on our list than they are on Rolling Stone's, but on the 2020 500 greatest albums of all time for Rolling Stone, this was number 27.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty high.
I thought for sure this would be one of the ones that we put higher than Rolling Stone, but no. Wow.
Number 62, Gorillaz, Demon Days.
Laughing gas, these hazmats, fast cat, lining them up like ass crack. Ladies, ponies at the track, it's my chocolate attack. Shit, I'm stepping in harder this year. Yeah, bear repping in harder this year. Watch me as I gravitate. Ha 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 ha. Yo, we gon' ghost town, this Motown.
Wow. Okay. I thought you were going to say self-titled, honestly. But yeah, I mean, Demon Days, I think Demon Days is the fan favorite. I love that self-titled debut. Demon Days is great, though. I mean, you get their two big hits for them on there. You get Feel Good Incorporated, and then kind of a more minor hit, but still pretty beloved, is Dare. But the rest of this album is really good. This, for a while, was like a big October listen for me. There was just something about the overall vibe of this album that felt like it fit in with like a nice fall drive. Chris, how did you dive into this one for the first time? I know that you're kind of like mixed on the Gorillaz as a whole.
I did, and I actually like it a lot more than I thought I would. I think I like a lot of the album tracks better than the singles. Not that the singles are bad, but I've just heard these singles so many times. I've heard Feel Good Incorporated so many times that when I hear it, I'm kind of like, okay, I don't really care that this is on. Matt, you never told me that
I was about to just say this.
Kids with Guns from this album features Nina Cherry. I didn't even know.
Features Nina Cherry, Dirty Harry with Booty Brown, De La Soul doing Feel Good Incorporated. A lot of like old school hip hop. MF Doom shows up on this record. My favorite weird cameo though is the song Fire Coming Out of the Monkey's Head that features Dennis Hopper reading a story basically to the audience. This album is really, really fun. I love this project. Like, I love everything about the Gorillaz. They're definitely one of those bands that, like, if a new album comes out from them, I go out and get it immediately. This was the last album that I thought was truly great. But, I mean, they still are always kind of... I like the Gorillaz way more than I ever liked Blur, is what I'll say.
Mm-hmm. Matt, our list puts this album way higher than Rolling Stone did, which had it ranked at number 437 on their 500 greatest albums list. So we got it at 62. Our friends and associates and listeners like Gorillaz a lot. They like it more. They like this Gorillaz album more than Thriller, apparently, which, hey, we got the wildest list out there. Number 61, Ben Folds 5, Whatever and Ever, Amen.
Find a battle who could care less. Every day you wake up late. Sometimes I wish I was that way.
You know, I was about to say that none of my albums got represented on this list. But no, this was my number 7.
This was my number 10.
Yeah, this is my favorite Ben Folds release.
Me too.
I truly don't believe that there's a bad song on this album. From the very opening track, the One Angry Dwarf and 200 Solemn Faces, just like kicks this record off into high gear. And the way it just like beautifully ebbs and flows between these high energy, as like Ben Folds at the time called it, piano punk or punk rock for wusses, like that high energy, angry, angsty songs. But then you get stuff like Fair and Brick and Smoke that are just like these beautiful songs. My favorite song is the closing track, Evaporated.
Oh yeah.
Like that song breaks my heart every time I hear it. But then like you get stuff like Battle of Who Could Care Less and Steven's Last Night that are just so fun. Or Kate. Kate was like this like pseudo hit for them after the fact. Like that was like a song that people discovered later and loved. Like there's every moment of this album is so catchy, so sing-alongable. I love their debut, but this really proved how good of a songwriter Ben Folds actually was. And it also really solidified how tight that rhythm section was to making this work in a way that like I love Ben Folds' solo output, but it never hits the same way as these like early Ben Folds albums. And Chris, I don't know if you know this about this album. This was recorded in that like old 1930s style of like just a microphone in the center of the room and you're mostly listening to live recordings.
Oh, wow.
When you listen to this record, to the point that like when you listen to Cigarette, you can hear the crickets from outside Ben Folds' window chirping while he's playing that song. Or my favorite one, and try to find this and add it in, during Steven's Last Night in Town, there's a point where you hear Ben Folds' house phone ringing and the bass player starts laughing, and it's all in the recording because it's basically just live performances from this 3-piece in his living room.
Last night in town.
I had heard that story before, but that's incredible. I mean, from front to back, recently our buddy PJ and I were riding in the car back home from Punchline practice, and I put this album on front to back, and he actually texted me, and he's like, man, I don't like my list. It was too late. We were already recording these episodes, but he's like, I don't like my list. He's like, I realized when we were listening to that Ben Folds 5 album that should have been on my list. And I'm like, damn, I should have played that for him sooner. Maybe we would have got this album higher on the list or something. But I'm not doing that. I'm not trying to influence the list here. But I think this is a perfect album. It's funny that everyone knows Brick the most from this album. That is not completely representative of what a wild roller coaster of emotions this album is. But you brought him up, Matt. Fair, Selfless, Cold, and Composed, Smoke. These are beautiful songs with lyrics that hit me so hard that if I really tried, I could get emotional. If I was by myself and like really in a state of mind, I mean, there's a reason why Ben Folds is one of my all-time favorites. So I'm glad this is on the list. I could have seen it being higher, but 61 is pretty respectable.
I want to read this quote real quick from the Wikipedia under the recording portion. They just had a little paragraph here. It said, the album was recorded in the front room of a house in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Folds says, you can't go for perfection when you record in a house. Our producer, Kayla, was very good at knowing when an idea was blowing through the house and people don't buy records for it to sound accurate.
Wow.
He goes, the record label signed a deal saying that they would not get to hear the album until we declared it was finished. So they knew what they were getting into before we put it out.
Wow. That's awesome. Makes me like it even more. And Matt, how do you feel about this list so far? Because we are now, we're going to be 60 and up from here on out. But how do you feel about the first 40 here?
I'm feeling very good about the first 40. I'm also, like I said, I'm looking at my list of albums. So far, I think only 3 or 4 of my albums have made an appearance. And I'm trying to parse out which ones I was the only one writing for and they're not going to show up anywhere, and which ones I feel very confident will appear higher up on the list. And it's not looking good for my remaining 16.
Oh, no.
But who knows? I could be wrong. But this is, you said it before, this is the coolest 100 list that I've ever seen.
I think it's a very good list. And is Ben Folds 5, Whatever and Ever Amen, the first one that was on both of our lists so far? I think it might be.
It might be. Let me double check, because I know I was the only one that had Eels, because you had heard it for the first time doing this. Did you have a different Streets album?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you didn't have Piebald on your list?
I did not.
Okay, then yes, this is the first one where we both agreed on it.
Okay. Well, that's a good way to end this episode, and we'll be back next episode with 60 up to 41, and things are getting exciting over here. I hope you're all enjoying these episodes because I'm having fun making them.
And I'm having fun finding out what's on this list.
Rip out the mind in smoke.
Hey everybody, I really hope that you're all enjoying listening to One Hit Thunder as much as we enjoy making it. If you do, maybe consider leaving us a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or even texting this episode to a friend. If you'd like to join in on the conversation, join the One Hit Thunder group on Facebook, where you can meet a bunch of friendly music lovers, and make sure you follow us on Instagram too. And if you'd really like to see One Hit Thunder continue, and you'd like to get weekly bonus episodes, early releases of new episodes, and get to vote on what songs we feature on the show, join our Patreon over at patreon.com/OHT podcast. That would really mean the world to us, and we'll see you next week with a new episode of One Hit Thunder on Wednesday and 60 through 41 of the THUNDRED on Friday.
I don't think it overstates things to say that the Beatles were the greatest gift to entertainment and culture of our time, a secular religion, if you will, with their universal appeal and demonstrable impact on people's lives. I'm Robert Rodriguez, host of Something About the Beatles. With every episode, I speak with historians, musicians, artists, and Beatle witnesses, all in the service of fresh insights into the most joyous cultural entity the world has ever known. I hope you'll join me and listen to Something About the Beatles, now on Evergreen and wherever you get your podcasts.
The Helping Friendly podcast explores the music and fan experience of Phish through interviews and deep dives on shows and tours. For more than 10 years, we've created insightful and fun discussions about our favorite band, and with the help of our guests and thematic series, we're still discovering new angles of appreciation for Phish. And when the band is on tour, we provide a review of every show the following day. As one of our listeners said, any Phish fans that enjoy meandering conversations and incredible insight on new and old Phish shows, this is for you. Highly recommend. It's not just about the band and the shows, it's about the journey getting there. Throughout 2024, we're going to be running down the top 25 Phish tours of all time, and that'll be interspersed with show reviews and regular episodes. Join us and check out the Helping Friendly podcast wherever you get your podcasts.